Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Crystal and this is my social thread. So today I have my roundup of the month vlog, so all the makes that I have made in the month of October. And for those of you that do follow me, there will be a bit of a repetition obviously, because this will be going through everything I have made throughout the month of October, as I say, and so my Friday sews content will be essentially repeated. But I do have a couple of items that I haven't yet spoken about in a Friday sews episode, so there is some new content in this vlog as well. For those of you that don't normally follow me, please do consider doing so, and please kindly like and subscribe if you like my content. And this vlog is, as I say, a summary of everything that I have been up to sewing wise in the month of October, so it's a nice place to see all of that in one vlog. So first and foremost, what I'm wearing is I'm only wearing a ready-to-wear dress, I'm afraid, today. So there's nothing really to talk about in that regard. And my first make of the month, it's not in a particular order. Actually, I've done it in reverse order, so the items that I haven't yet spoken about will be the items I'll be speaking about first. So it's slightly new content for you. Okay, so one of the items that I made in October is this beautiful dress here. It is the Sew Over It vintage shirt dress, made up in a beautiful, I think it's called a cobalt blue linen from Jenny Stitches Fabrics, with a lovely floral design there. And if I show you up close, you can see the linen texture of that there. This fabric is still actually available in their store, and I will put links down below so you can go and find them yourself as well. And it's basically a vintage shirt dress. It has a revere collar, so therefore it has no collar stand at the back. It is a button front all the way down. It has a waist here, and it has what are these called? They're not darts, they're like pleats on the front bodice, and pleats at the back bodice as well. It's 3/4 sleeves, and it's got a lovely like a turn-up cuff there. It doesn't have any pockets. Oh, it does. Did I add pockets? Let me check. I've got the pattern here. It's a Sew Over It vintage shirt dress, as I say. And this was actually my blogger project for Jenny Stitches Fabrics. I'm one of her brand ambassadors, and this is the project that I chose for the month of, I believe it was September, but by the time it gets released on her blog is when I then release it on my vlog, and so I've included it in my October makes. Let me have a look if it's got pockets. No, it doesn't have pockets, so I added pockets of my own. And the pockets, my go-to pockets are the Tilly and the Buttons pockets for the indigo dress or for the Lyra dress. I just love the size of it. I don't know if I have it to hand, but I love the size of it. I also love her instructions for attaching the pockets, because she starts off by asking you to serge all the way around the pockets and all the way down the sides of the skirt pieces, so they're already done. So when you attach the pockets together, you don't then need to be fiddling around with finishing off the edges. I also like the fact that you have to sew down the seam allowances, and that prevents the pockets from peeking out, or the lining of the pockets from peeking out. So it's, don't know if you can see from here. So if you can see from there, that is actually sewn down. So the seam allowance is actually anchored down, and that prevents, as I say, the lining from popping out of the dress. So let's start from the beginning. Sew Over It vintage shirt dress. It is from Sew Over It, and here is the pattern here. So these are the line drawings. It's a real shirt dress, as in the buttons do open all the way down. As I say, it's a revere collar. I think that's what it's called when it doesn't have a collar stand. So it's like a flat collar, slightly curved lapels. It's got some gathering at both yokes, 3/4 length sleeves, a turn up at the sleeves, and these, they look like darts, but they're actually what do they call them, pin tucks? I can't remember what I just called them. Pin tucks, I think. was the word that I used, but they do look like darts. So you've got them at the back of the bodice and the skirt, and at the front bodice and skirt as well. The options are just the sleeveless version or the sleeved version. Obviously the sleeves you can lengthen and shorten as you please, and the skirt you can lengthen and shorten as you please as well. This pattern goes from a size 8, which is a UK size 8, which is a bust of 33 inches, waist of 26, all the way up to a size 20, which is a bust of 45 inches, waist of 38 inches. And I do know that all of their patterns are now in the extended size range, so that will go up all the way up to a size UK 30. And so when you buy the patterns, you get a choice between the smaller size range and sort of the plus size range. It's an intermediate sew. It's got it here, an intermediate sew. And what did I find about this? Okay, so in terms of what I did differently from the pattern, the only thing that I did differently was I added an inch to the bodice. Don't know, so I added an inch to the bodice, and the reason I did that is because I have got quite a lot of Lisa Comfort Sew Over It patterns, and I find that the vintage bodice fit on me is quite high, like it's almost empire line. Maybe because I don't know, because I have quite a short body, but I don't think that would explain the reason why. So I just feel that it's a little bit too high on me where the bodice cuts off, and so I decided to add an inch. Unfortunately, now that I've added the inch, I found out that it's actually a little bit too long for me, so I should have just left that out. So the next time I do it, and there will be a next time because I really, really love this dress, I will not extend the bodice by an inch anymore. Everything else was the same, but I did also add a couple of inches to the bottom of the skirt because I quite like midi length dresses on myself, and the rest is as the pattern suggests. Oh, and the pockets as well. Sorry, I added pockets because I just love pockets in a dress. And I'll pop up some photos of myself wearing it, and I will also just have a look at my excuse me, my notes here. Tamarack, what is this, vintage shirt dress? So yeah, those were the only things that I noted as far as my notes say. The only other thing was with regards to these, oh, pleats, that's the word, not pin tucks. Sorry, the pleats. With regards to the pleats, I guess it gives a bit of shaping. You can't really see it. So these are the front pleats here. It does give a bit of shaping, but when you wear it, it tends to kind of open out a little bit. So I'm guessing there's no reason why you couldn't just turn those into a dart. You'd still have the same effect, but just a dart. So maybe next time I would do a dart instead of a pleat, because then it's just sort of fixed and nothing is moving. And I just think, especially at the waist, you don't want sort of bits gaping and moving, because it kind of gives the impression that you have maybe a bigger waist than you would want to portray. And so I think, and the back as well, I think I would just turn those into darts, which is easily done. It's the same technique. You would just sew it all down from the inside. Also, a funny mishap, everything in this, when I was making this pattern, you know when you get some patterns where you really, really enjoy every single part of it? This was one of them. And I think maybe it's because I was working with linen. For some reason, when I work with linen, everything seems to come together really, really quickly, really smoothly. Everything's just a joy to piece together. This was one of those occasions when I have thoroughly enjoyed everything, you know, making this pattern. But I did find that oddly at the back of the skirt I had too much fabric, and that's probably about 1.5 centimeters, which is quite a lot of extra fabric. So I just ended up doing sort of a box pleat at the back, which you can't really see because the pattern is quite busy. So that's quite good. I mean, if it was like a plain fabric, I don't think it would look too bad, because I don't know if you can see the box pleat there. It's quite central and it's quite even, so it probably wouldn't be too bad. But when I make the pattern again, I will just make sure that my I've cut the pattern pieces correctly, because everything else fit perfectly, and I don't know why that one didn't why the skirt didn't end up fitting the bodice perfectly either. So the things I love about this pattern, I do love the vintage look, and I know Gertie does a lot of vintage, well, she only does vintage patterns, but I've never actually used any of her patterns. So over it I probably have all of the patterns that I want to have from her collection, because they are just so beautiful, and the vintage vibe is really, really beautiful as well. So what I like about this is definitely the gathered sleeve heads. I think just that tiny detail in itself, it just elevates the whole dress. I think just that little gathering on the shoulder just makes the dress look a little bit more elegant, a little bit more ladylike, and definitely it is definitely a vintage vibe. So I love the gathered shoulders, the gathered sleeve heads. And to be fair, wherever I do have sleeves that need setting in, I try to, and I know people won't agree with me, I try to, as much as possible, either add more to the sleeve head to gather in the sleeve head, so I've got more of a poof at the sleeve head. The only other times that I have actually set in a sleeve properly without puckers is obviously for like a coat or a jacket, or I must have done it in some patterns before. But to be fair, when I first started sewing, I didn't realize that you weren't supposed to have any puckers or gathers, because funnily enough, when I first started sewing, I was using Sew Over It patterns and Tilly and the Button patterns, and my very first dress I made from Sew Over It was the shift dress, ultimate shift dress. And I didn't realize that when you insert a sleeve, when you set in a sleeve, that you had to get rid of those pin tucks and puckers. I keep saying pin tucks. Well, you have to get rid of those puckers. And I actually quite like the end result anyway, because as I say, I love the gathered look anyway. But I've never come across a pattern actually that says when you insert, so obviously you have to put your gathering stitches in, and then you're supposed to, you know, pull the thread to gather it, and then you're supposed to set in the sleeve nicely into the sleeve, into the arm side. But I've never actually read in a pattern that when inserting the sleeve head, you must make sure there are no puckers or gathers. I don't even believe Tilly and the Buttons has that, but if she does have that in her patterns, because I do have all of the Tilly and the Buttons patterns that I like anyway, and I don't believe she has that in her patterns either. And the only reason I'm thinking about this issue now is because I read it in the Friday Pattern Company Heather Blazer instructions, where it says set in the sleeve, and it says make sure there are no puckers or gathers, and that was the first time I had actually heard of that. Although since then I have set in a sleeve properly without puckers, because I've just watched YouTube videos and sort of other tutorials and things where people have done that. But I thought, as a beginner, if you're not told that, you would, well, I didn't know anyway. That's just a bit of trivia for you. And obviously the Friday Pattern Company Heather Blazer is sort of outerwear, it's a jacket, and so you definitely don't, I mean, to be fair, you could have gathers if you wanted to, but for these type of sort of tailored items, you should really have a beautifully set in sleeve without puckers. And I was just, you know, thinking I would just mention that, because it's like a tiny detail in an instruction that just popped out at me, and I just realized I've never read that before. So there you go. Anyway, sorry, I hope I haven't bored you too much. It's got a facing here as well. And let me just check. I think it is, yep. So the facing goes all the way down. It's an all-in-one facing. So you've got the back facing here, and then the facing covers all the way around the front lapel, all the way down to this hole. And then that becomes the facing for your button placket as well. So that's that one. I really, really like it. Planning some more. I probably won't be planning any more for winter, because it is 3/4 sleeves. I find that wearing 3/4 sleeve dresses, undercoats and things, it's very hard to get the sleeves in. So you either have the sleeves sort of pushed up under your coat, which is really uncomfortable, or you're just forever, anyway, I just find it really uncomfortable. And so I will probably leave that pattern until spring, summer, when 3/4 sleeves or shorter sleeves will be more suitable. So that's that pattern there, number one. In terms of the instructions, sorry, very easy to do. Everything was straightforward, no tricky things at all. Yep, no tricky things at all. So that's a Sew Over It vintage shirt dress. The next item I wanted to talk about is the the Wilder gown. which I have right here. So the pattern is the Friday Pattern Company Wilder gown. This pattern comes in a size extra small, bust of 32, waist of 24 inches, all the way up to a 4X, bust of 53, waist of 46 inches. And I'll show you the line drawing. So it's basically like a buffet dress. You have a bodice here, which is quite short actually, and then you've got 2 tiers here that you can vary the lengths of that as you please. And the main feature of this, I don't know if you can see, it's a raglan sleeve, and then the bodice and the sleeves, the top parts of it fold into itself to make a channel for a necktie. And so it's like a gathered necktie with raglan sleeves. Lots of fabric, very swishy, and you've got the dress option or the blouse version. The blouse version is obviously extended. Now this is really popular. This was really popular in the summer, and I had bought this pattern ages and ages ago, but I hadn't yet tried it because it does require a lot of fabric. I think 4 meters it requires, and I thought I had finally got some fabric that I thought I just wanted to use up, and I decided to make the Wilder gown. Now in my October plans, this particular fabric that I'm going to show you now, I had earmarked for a Tilly and the Buttons Lyra dress, but when I was getting ready to sew, I just looked at the fabric and I thought, actually I quite like the idea of that being a Wilder gown, so I made a Wilder gown out of it, and I'll post a picture of me wearing it. Unfortunately, I didn't like it at all. I added waist ties, which doesn't come in the pattern, but I added waist ties just to cinch me in at the waist a bit. Without the waist ties, I think it just looks like a very sort of 1800s nightgown, you know, because you're like fully covered up to your neck. I extended the sleeves. Actually, I used the Onella blouse sleeves, which is a free pattern from Mood Fabric. So it's basically a billowy bishop sleeve with a cuff. I beg your pardon. And I did the midi length, and that was quite long, so I was fully covered in this fabric, and I just didn't like it. And also I just didn't feel like it was, I just didn't feel comfortable moving in it. And I also thought that the neckline didn't sit very well, like I was forever trying to adjust it to make it sit well and look nice on me. And what I ended up doing in the end was chopping off the bodice. So cutting off the Wilder gown bodice and making the Tilly and the Buttons Lyra bodice, which I have made many times before. It's my favorite go-to shirt dress. And then the skirt I left as is because it's very similar to the Lyra skirt. And also the Wilder gown skirt, I added the Tilly and the Buttons Lyra pockets anyway. So essentially I just made the Lyra blouse. I managed to save the sleeves, the Onella blouse sleeves, put that on the Lyra blouse, and then added the Wilder gown skirt with the Tilly and the Buttons pockets. And I'll show you her here. So this is made in a beautiful cotton lawn. It's a William Morris-esque design from Sew Me Sunshine Fabrics. And when I posted it, Sew Me Sunshine said if they could repost it on their Instagram page, which is always lovely, and to get sort of the pattern companies or the fabric companies to repost your post. So I much prefer it as the Lyra dress. And I'll pop up some photos of it now as the Lyra dress. And I thought I will just quickly talk about the Wilder gown, and then I'll talk about the Lyra pattern as well. So the Wilder gown, to be fair, it does say you should have drapey fabric, so viscose challis, silks, viscose twills, so anything flowy and drapey. Obviously this is a cotton lawn, so it was the wrong choice of fabric anyway. So I am thinking, if I have some other fabric, which I do have some fabric in my stash, I must give this Wilder gown another go, because I do like the style. I love flowy midi dresses, and I just think I've seen so many people on Instagram with beautiful versions, and I just really want one. So I'm going to try and do it in a swishy drapey viscose, and hopefully my opinion of the Wilder gown will change. It is a very simple dress, so it is basically, I don't know if you can see, So it is basically the bodice and then the raglan sleeves, and the top of it you just fold it in on itself to make a channel for the tie. I added a couple of inches to my bodice because this is quite cropped, and from people that have previously made them, they have said it is quite cropped, so add more length to your bodice if you want to. And again, as I say, the Ornella blouse sleeves I added on, and then the rest was the same. It is a simple make. There are no fixtures or fastenings, no zips, nothing like that. And if you can't be bothered to make the tie, you could either buy matching like ribbon to go in the neck, or a contrast ribbon as well. That would look quite nice, but I do want to give this one another go. So that's the Wilder gown. Let's talk about the Lyra. So as I say, I kind of upcycled the Wilder gown, which I didn't like, into the Tilly and the Buttons Lyra, and I actually entered it as one of my entries for the hashtag So Upcycle 22 challenge, which was hosted by Becky from Notes from the Sewing Room, and also Karen from So Little Time. So I entered, so it was great. So I made a transformation and I entered it into a competition, well, entered it into a sewing challenge as well. Going back to the Lyra dress, one of my favorite go-to dresses, Tilly and the Buttons Lyra. This goes from a size 1 UK 6, bust of 30, waist of 24, all the way up to a UK 24, bust of 48, waist of 42, and all of her patterns now are in the extended size range. I believe it goes all the way up to a size UK size 32, which is fab. Line drawings. So it's a shirt dress. It's quite a loose bodice actually. It does have bust darts though. This is a proper collar with a collar stand. So you've got, it sits up a bit more. You've got the long sleeves with the elasticated cuff, or the short sleeves, and then you've got 2 tiers of the skirt here, and you've got waist ties, button front, and pockets. And obviously the skirt tiers, you can adjust them to make maybe a shorter top tier, a longer bottom tier, or vice versa, or you can just have the one tier as well. And I really love this pattern. Tilly and the Buttons are well known for their instructions, and I have made about 8. I've made about 8 of these Lyra dresses, and the only adjustments I have to make to the Lyra is a forward shoulder adjustment, and oddly it's only in this pattern by Tilly and the Buttons, or any other pattern, this is the only pattern, sorry, that I have had to make a forward adjustment. Forward shoulder adjustment. So basically where this shoulder seam lies, where I've made so many, I've realized that it actually kind of, the shoulder seam sits a bit further back on me, and it's supposed to sit directly on sort of your shoulder line here, and therefore I realized I needed a forward shoulder adjustment. And in order to do that, I just googled Sew Essential. They're very good with their tutorials. Forward shoulder adjustment from Sew Essential on YouTube, and it was very easy to adjust my pattern piece, and I just keep that pattern piece now for all my Lyra dresses. This is the first time I have used the Ornella blouse sleeve for this. So it's basically, again, as I say, gathered sleeve heads, which I love, a bit more of a billowy sleeve, and a beautiful cuff here. And the reason I love this is because it just looks so elegant and feminine. And also this particular cuff doesn't have any fastenings, so it's the perfect size for your hand to go through, and for it to sit well without any buttons or anything. So it's an easier make in terms of a sleeve cuff. And overall, yes, did I post up photos? If not, I'll post up photos of my Lyra out now. I have posted photos, but I've just realized, and I really like that. And I just think the Lyra, I know the Lyra suits me, and I know I like the Lyra, hence I've made 8. So this is my go-to pattern, and I'm glad I was able to rescue the Wilder gown because I didn't like it at all. So that's that pattern there, or that dress there, thank you. That's Tilly, and that's the Wilder gown. And just quickly talking about the hashtag So Upcycle challenge, I did also do another, so this was my original entry, or original idea for my So Upcycle challenge. Basically my daughter, my eldest daughter, I made her a pinafore. I might have the pattern still here. Oh, I had to. I made this, gosh, a good 6 years ago now, or maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think everybody's sort of lost concept of time. I made the Quick Sew K4138 pattern. It's this lovely pinafore here, and I think back in the day I wasn't that experienced. Again, is it considered a big four? I mean, it's not a indie pattern, so the instructions were okay, but I mean, because I wasn't that experienced as a sewer, I did find it a bit difficult inserting the waistband and everything else. But anyhow, I made her a lovely pinafore dress in a beautiful Liberty cotton, quilting cotton, and the print is called Mammy. And she did wear it for a while, but now she's outgrown it, and I knew that I wasn't going to throw it away or give it to charity because the fabric was so precious. And finally, 3 or 4 or 5 years later, I decided to use it as part of the Sew Upcycle Challenge, and I made, let me show you a photo of the pinafore. And I knew I was going to do this. When I was talking about the Sew Upcycle Challenge, I said to myself, I must take a photo of it before I cut it up, and I just made a mental note of that. And as I was getting ready to do the project, I cut off the top bib part, and I was like, oh no, I forgot to take a photo. So this photo is basically the skirt where I have just kind of put the bib part on top, as a, you know, just to show you what it used to look like. And then the upcycle I made, a bit creased, sorry, is this little one here. It is the Be Curious dress. So this is the fabric. It's beautiful Liberty cotton in their Mammy print. And this is the dress here. It's basically just a lined bodice, long sleeves with an elasticated cuff, buttons at the back. I've put some coral poppers there, and a gathered skirt. And initially my plans were to make, I thought I had enough fabric. So that was for my 15-year-old, the original pinafore dress. I thought I had enough fabric in the skirt, in that pinafore, to make a Be Curious dress for my 7-year-old. And as I was putting the pattern pieces together, it's funny how you think you can see, you know, you can see the fabric and you think that's loads of fabric, I can get something really big out of that or really good out of it. And then you realize actually the pattern pieces won't fit. And so that was supposed to be for my 7-year-old, and I thought, if only I had a younger daughter to make it for, and I do. I have an 18-month-old, and that's what I ended up making. So can you imagine, from me thinking I could get a dress for a 7-year-old out of it, I could only get a dress for my 18-month-old. And there was a bit of scrap left, to be fair, but nothing big enough to make anything sort of dressy, as it were. I'll pop up some photos of my 18-month-old wearing it. This is Ava, and toddlers are very difficult to take photographs of, so I'll just pop up a couple of shots there. And she's very cute, if I say so myself. So with the Be Curious dress, oh, I haven't shown you the pattern, I'm sorry. Yes. This is by Ellie & Mac, and it is my go-to pattern for girls' dresses. It goes from an age 12 months to Big Kid 12, although I do find for these sort of patterns, Big Kid 12 isn't really a Big Kid 12. It's, well, for my children anyway, I normally size up 1 or 2 years for them. So it's basically a lined bodice, long sleeves with elasticated cuff, or you can have sleeveless with a little ruffle, and then you've got a big tier and a little ruffle there. And obviously you can sort of change those around. Instructions are fairly easy. It's a lined bodice, as I say, and the only thing that I just did here was the bodice. So this is sort of a vintage style bodice where it's quite cropped, but I just lengthened hers by about 1 inch. I didn't do the ruffle on mine, on hers. And also with regards to the elasticated cuff, they do give you measurements for the elastic, and I know it's silly really to follow that, but I obviously most people with common sense would measure their child's wrist circumference. And what I've done now, I've made a note to myself, whenever I do the wrist circumference, I add 1 inch for seam allowance, and I also add another inch for ease, which seems to work well, because before I made one, and you know when you get the elastic marks on your wrist because it's too tight, and even with the 1 inch seam 1 inch ease, it stays close to her wrist, but it moves, but it's not too loose. So that's perfect for me, or for my child anyway. So that's the Ellie & Mac Be Curious dress pattern. Next, I have this dress here. It is, let me show you the pattern. This is the dress that I made for from my subscription box from Little Miss So and So. So I'm also a brand ambassador for Little Miss So and So, and every month I get one of their All Set to Sew So Luxurious kits, which as you might have guessed, contains everything you need for a project. This time round I chose the Sew Over It Georgie dress, and it's this one here, and it's basically a knit jersey dress. It's a faux wrap, so it doesn't actually come undone. It's a faux wrap front, fully lined bodice, short, long sleeves, and 3/4 sleeves, but the sleeves, as usual, you can adjust those. And the variations are a gathered skirt with a normal hem and a 3/4 circle skirt with a kind of curved hem. So this goes from a size 6 to 30. Body measurement size 6, bust of 31, waist of 24, all the way up to a size 20, bust of 45, waist of 38. So this is the lower, this is the smaller size range, and then obviously they have the size 20 to size 30 as well as part of their extended size range. So this again is a very easy make. So with regards to lining the bodice, this is the first time that I've lined the bodice in fabric that isn't the same as the main fabric, so it requires sort of viscose jersey, cotton jersey, that sort of thing. And I just used to line, because I've made about 4 of these now, I just used to line my bodice with the same fabric as the main fabric. But in this particular kit I got some viscose jersey to line my cotton jersey dress, which actually works out much better because viscose jersey is slightly lighter, so you don't have that much bulk in the bodice. And I'll show you the dress that I made. It is here. So this is made up in a Dashwood Studio cotton jersey, and then, as I say, it's got the navy viscose jersey in there to do the bodice. And this was a make for my daughter. I'll pop up some photos of her wearing it. The only adjustments I made for her, she is, as I say, I've made the Georgie dress before, and I go for a size 12, but my daughter is slightly bigger busted than me, so I went up a size in the bust, and I just graded down the waist a little bit, and I lengthened the skirt by a tiny bit as well. So yeah, so this is the wrap dress here. It's got a bit of ruching at the side. You can adjust this. I went for the long sleeve, and I went for the 3/4 length skirt without the gathers. And with the kit I got obviously the matching thread or the elastics, that sort of thing. Sorry, this neckline here has got some it's like clear underwear elastic. I'm not quite sure what it's called. I guess it's like underwear elastic or swimwear elastic all the way around this whole neckline and bodice, this whole neckline, just to stabilize the neckline, you know, rather so that it doesn't what's it called, get sort of pulled out of shape with wear. And the thread that I got was the normal Gutterman's thread, but I did use, just for the hems of my sleeves, the Mariflex thread from Gutterman's, which I had in my own stash. So that's, let me see if I can find it. Yeah. So the Gutterman's Mariflex thread has got a yellow top to identify itself, I suppose. And if I just take out a bit of the thread, whoopsies, and I can show you the stretch. So it's basically stretchy thread. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Oop, I don't know if you see that. 1, 2, 3. Dicky, dicky, dicky. There you go. And basically this is used for stretch fabrics, and you don't have, without the need to use a zigzag stitch. So you basically use your normal straight stitch, which for me is 2.5 sort of straight stitch, and that the stretch in the thread allows the fabric to stretch, obviously, without them popping, and so it's great for necklines and things. But I just thought, in particular with my hemmed sleeve, I don't feel it's as stretchy as it should be. I mean, I don't know. So basically I watched a video with Rachel and Stitched Up. She had made some athletic wear, and she'd used some Mariflex, and she was stretching hers like really far, and the stitches weren't popping at all. And I was just kind of expecting that with this, but it doesn't. I mean, it's fine. It was just a point to note that it's not as stretchy as I thought it would be, although it does the job. That's the main point. So with regard to the Georgie dress, everything is straightforward. The only thing is on the sides, there are quite a few layers. So basically you've got the front two parts, but then that's also lined. Then you have the back bodice and the lining of the back bodice. So as you sew all of these together, that's 2, 4, 6, 6, no, 2, 4. So 4 layers of fabric here, 4 layers of fabric here. So it's just make sure you pin it all together so nothing gets like it all goes under the machine properly without any without creating any holes. But that's my Sew Over It Georgie. So that's that one. Oh, and the other thing as well with the Dashwood Studio fabric. So as I say, I am a So Luxurious member, which means I have the choice of choosing any of their luxurious fabrics for my kit, and that includes Dashwood Studios, Atelier Brunette, Art Gallery, Lady McElroy. I actually haven't bought any Dashwood Studio fabric before, and just from my experience from this, I don't know if you can see up close, but it's kind of, I mean, she's washed it maybe twice, but it's kind of gone a bit bubbly with like a whitey, like a white layer. And so I do have colour detergent, which I use. Maybe I should wash it inside out. Would that help? I don't know. So I'm just a bit disappointed that the fabric didn't, I mean, from over here, this is what it's supposed to look like. But up close, it's just a little bit washed out and bobbly. And so I wasn't really expecting that from designer fabric, but maybe it's the way that I've cared for it and washed it. Maybe I didn't do the same or the right process, but there you go. Just thought I'd mention that. So that's that one. How many items is that? So that's 1, 2, 3, and the baby dress, so that's 4 items. And then the other thing that I made in October was another Be Curious dress, unfortunately. But this one is for my daughter and my other daughter, my 7-year-old daughter. It works out quite nicely. So as I say, this dress made out of the pinafore. I was supposed to cut up the pinafore to make a Be Curious for my 7-year-old, but I only had enough fabric to make a Be Curious for my 18-month-old, and that's Liberty fabric. But then I did have, to be fair, more Liberty fabric, and this is a cotton lawn. This is their Poppy and Daisy print, and I have my own dress. I have a Tilly and the Buttons indigo in this fabric, and I did buy extra fabric because I knew I wanted to make my daughter a dress as well. So this is the same Be Curious dress, long sleeves, elasticated cuffs, the same coral poppers on the back, gathered skirt, and this time I do have a frill. I find the frill looks better on bigger girls than they do on babies or toddlers, and that's just my preference. So again, it's a Be Curious pattern by Ellie and Mac, and I'll pop up some photos of my daughter wearing it. And this fabric is just beautiful. I mean, Liberty, just lovely. And so that's that dress. And then the other 2 things that I made in October were 2 coats. So, well, one was the Heather Blazer. Let me just put this away. I'll tidy it away later, sorry. The Heather Blazer by Friday Pattern Company, and I'll show you the pattern here. Heather Blazer by the Friday Pattern Company, and it's basically quite a boxy, I'll show you if you can see the pattern there. It's quite a boxy blazer. It has a tiny bit of shaping at the back, but it is boxy. This is not fitted. 2-piece sleeve, a collar, what's this called, collar stand, a proper stand-up collar, button, patch pockets, and it's fully lined. This goes from a sorry, where are the measurements? Oh, hello. Yes, measurements. It goes from a size extra small, bust of 32, waist of 24, all the way up to a 7X. So it's really generous in the sizing. Bust of 59, waist of 52 inches. And I remember sizing down. So I should be a large in my measurements, which is a bust of 38, waist of 30. Although my waist isn't 30, my waist is bigger than that. But because it's a boxy style and it doesn't really go in at the waist, that's not really the measurement you should go for. So it's more the bust. But I know that it is quite an oversized blazer. So I went for the size medium in the end. That's right. And let me show you her. She's over here. She's over here. And I've made it in a beautiful, what is this called? It's basically curtain fabric. It's upholstery fabric in a lovely, it's almost like a watercolor floral design. Let me take her off actually. I'll put the camera back here. I'll show you the fabric up close. I mean, that is beautiful fabric. I really, really loved it. Really love it. And it is, I really, really enjoyed making this. I think for something that's like a coat or outerwear, I think people do tend to get quite scared or anxious about them. But because this pattern came together so beautifully, I was just really actually impressed by the instructions. I was impressed by the pattern pieces all fitting together beautifully, even with like, the lining all went together beautifully. You know, the notches of the collar all went together beautifully. I just think it's beautifully sewn, you know, without sounding too boastful. And as I say, the instructions that say make sure there are no puckers on your sleeve head. So that's the first time I've ever heard of that instruction, or have ever heard instructions like that. And it's in this pattern here. And so it's fully lined, as I say. I've just used, this is just an inexpensive anti-static lining material, and the fabric is an upholstery fabric, as I say. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pattern match. So you can see from the back, there's the back seam there, right in the center, only because I only had 2 meters of this. And in order to pattern match, I think I would have needed an extra ½ meter, but I didn't have any more fabric. I've got a little leather handmade tag, and I think that's from Little Rosy Cheeks, and a little tag from Prim. And when I first made this, I'll post up some photos of myself wearing it. I just thought that the opinions I got from my family was that the coat was, the jacket, the blazer was beautifully made, but that the print and the color was just too loud, and it wasn't me, and it was just very 80s and very loud, and it wouldn't go with anything that I have. And to be fair, I kind of thought that myself, because I kept asking people around the house, does it look okay? Can I wear it out? What should I wear it with? And the reactions I was getting from people were that it wasn't meant to leave the house, basically. And then I told people this on my Friday Sews episode, and I said I just don't feel confident wearing something that's so loud and so bright and bold, because it's just not me. And I had so much love for the blazer. Like, so many people were commenting saying, you know, the blazer's amazing, you should wear it, it's lovely, wear it with pride, and you know, it's such a lovely blazer. So when I did post it, I didn't even finish the lining. I didn't hand stitch the lining at the back, because I thought I'm never going to wear it. And they were like, my viewers were sort of messaging me saying, oh, please finish the blazer, you know, and then wear it, because it's really, really amazing. So I have finished it, and I've added the button as well. It's just it's a pinky button there. And I think actually if I wear it with like something, a one color, like sort of a black dress or something quite dark, and then have this with boots, I think it would actually look quite nice. And so thank you for all the love for the blazer. I think you have turned me around in the sense that I do like it now. The only thing that I would say about the Heather blazer in terms of the instructions were very, very good. The only part that I found quite confusing was when you're supposed to hem the lining and the main fabric together. And it does actually say sorry, bear with me, it does actually say something along the lines of, oh, hemming the blazer. It does actually say it itself. It says, hemming the blazer is pretty easy, but it does require accuracy and it's a bit tricky to convey in the illustrations alone. And if you do read the illustrations, it's number 27 on page 20. It's really, really confusing. Like I couldn't figure it out. But if you read it and try and copy it on your fabric, on your make, it actually is very, very easy, and it will just come together really quickly. And I love how there is, apart from the center seam for the lining, sorry that I haven't ironed that bit, apart from the center seam for the lining, there is no hand stitching involved. So all of the let me stand up, all of the hems at the bottom, they're all beautifully enclosed, so you don't have to hand stitch that. And it's like, what is it called? Is it a burrito? Not burrito method. It's all like a bagging out method, where the whole lining is attached all the way round and at the bottom as well from the outside, and then you fold it in on itself, and then you just stitch together the back seam allowance of the lining. And I think that's beautifully done, because when it comes out, it's actually miraculous how it's all beautifully lined and stitched together without the need for hand stitching. So my only quarrel about it's not really a quarrel as such, is I find that the pockets here, it's too close to the end of the blazer. So next time, I don't want to adjust the placement of the pockets or the size of the pockets, because I think they're perfect. So the next time I am just going to add maybe like 1.5 inches to the length, so that I have some space between the bottom of the pocket and the bottom of the blazer. Apart from that, I really, really enjoyed it. Let me see if I've got any other notes on here. What is this thing called? The heather. Oh, okay. Oh, also with the instructions for the pocket, they just tell you to fold in, sorry, sneeze. I'm so sorry. So they tell you to do with the pockets, they just tell you to fold over the sides and the bottoms, fold them over and sew them down. I decided to overlock my sides all the way around, just because I think it's a neater finish. Also, if you were to look inside the pockets, you can still, they're still raw, as in if that wasn't overlocked, it would be raw edges inside, so over time that would probably fray. So I think definitely overlock your pocket pieces before folding them over and sewing them down. And the other thing as well that I wanted to point out was there is a bit of a curve on the back. There is a bit of a curve on the back bodice, which I think is quite nice. It adds subtle shaping, but I think that's quite a nice bit of detail. Similarly to their salt water slip, I believe they do have the shaping as well at the back. So this is the back bodice here. So this is the front bodice. Is that the front bodice? Yeah. So this is the front bodice. So you can see it's just straight at the bottom, at the middle side seam here, or center seam. But if you can see with the back bodice, it's just got a slight curve in there. So when they join together, you just got a slight curve in the back of the blazer that corresponds with the small of your back. So it's got a tiny bit of shaping. It's subtle, but I just like the fact that they kind of thought of that. And that's it really. So yeah, so that's that lovely heather blazer. That one there. Let me just pop her back on. And the last thing that I made in the month of October was another coat. And it is the, where is it? It's the Grainline Studio Tamarack jacket, actually. And I'll show you the pattern here. It is this one here, Grainline Studio Tamarack jacket. And it's basically a quilted jacket, very simple to do. Quilted jacket with, what are these called? These pockets are called welt pockets. Sorry, they're called welt pockets. And you can either have hooks at the front or poppers. And I also bought the add-on pack, which is the hood here. And you've also got the collar, which I wasn't keen on, but I bought it for the hood. And just to say, when I first bought the Tamarack jacket, normally you would type in like Tamarack and all the Tamarack associated items should pop up on their website. But oddly, the Tamarack hood didn't appear on the website. And so I was looking at people's versions on Instagram and things, and some people had hoods on theirs, and I really, really liked that idea. And I was asking them sort of, how did you draft the hood? Is it self-drafted? What did you do? And then someone told me that they actually had an add-on. So I went back to the Greyline Studio website, and I think if you type in Tamarack hood or something, then it does come up. And so I had to buy that. But I just think when you type in Tamarack, all the associated items should pop up. Anyhow, so this particular jacket is very easy to make. The only, I guess, not hard, but laborious task is quilting your own fabric. Luckily, I already bought pre-quilted fabric, so I could skip most of the instructions in that regard. And the only other thing I did was lengthen it to make it into coat length, add the hood, which was part of the add-on pack. And instead of making welt pockets, because my fabric's so thick, I'll show you later on, I added pockets, just side seam pockets. And guess what pocket pattern I used? I used the Tilly and the Buttons indigo pocket pieces and instructions, and it worked out quite well. Also, the instructions do tell you to use so it's basically bias bound all the way around as well. And instead of bias binding, I used twill tape instead, because I found it was sort of a nicer quality for a coat, and it was the right thickness that I needed for the bias binding, for the binding of the coat. I'll show you my version here. So this is, it's been worn a lot, so I went for pre-quilted fabric. It's denim on the outside and like a teddy shearling on the inside, and this was from Fabric Godmother, although So Mish Sunshine had it in stock as well, and also Guthrie and Ghani had it in stock maybe last year, I believe. And let me show you the inside. So I just made, so that little hook I made myself just out of leftover twill tape, and it's all fully bound inside as well, all fully bound inside. I used prim poppers, and my pockets are here, filling the buttons pockets. And I'll pop up some photos of me wearing it. So I really, really love this coat because it's cozy, it's warm, it's trendy, it's quilted, and I made it myself, which is even better. So the pattern is really easy because there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are only 5 pattern pieces. So you've got the front, 2 fronts, 1, 2, 2 sleeves, 3, 4, and a back bodice piece. So it's fairly easy to put together and fairly quick. The only reason it took me a long time was because it's bias bound, and I also decided to bias bound all of my seams on the inside. So essentially, every seam is sewn 3 times. So once to create the seam, attach 2 bits together to create the seam, then once to anchor one half of the bias binding, or in my case twill tape, and then another set of stitches to anchor the other half down. So every seam was stitched over 3 times. So it's essentially like making 3 coats. And then obviously bias bound all the way round. So it did take a long time, but it's a nice finish, and I'm glad that I did it. The only things I would change next time are these prim poppers. I really don't like them because some of them close beautifully, some of them don't, and they're the type that you just hammer in, and I don't know whether I've hammered it in too much or too little, but I really don't like them. And this is actually probably the 2nd time now I've used these. I've used these for a pinafore before, and I had the same sort of experience with them. So next time I am after some poppers, I'm really not going to go for these ones. I want to try a different type of fastening. The other thing as well is the hood. I'm not really keen on that hood seam there. It just kind of looks like a puppet mouth, like it's been cut off. So I would much rather have like a pointy hood, so more like pixie like. So that's easily changeable, I think. And so those are the 2 things I would change: the poppers and the hood. And that's it. I mean, I wouldn't be rushing to make this coat again, only because it's a lovely coat. It's very expensive, actually. I think this fabric was £25 a metre, and I used 2.5 meters, plus the bias binding, the patterns, everything else. So it's probably like £100 coat worth of materials. And I don't want to quilt my own fabric, and I haven't seen any other sort of quilted fabric that I would like to make. And anyway, I don't need another one of these because I've just made one, but it is a nice pattern, and it would be my go-to pattern if this coat gets too worn out, or I'm after sort of a quilted coat pattern. Definitely this is my go-to. The other thing I do really like about it is, as I say, it's very, very simple to make. It's quilted, which is very fashionable, but I also like the fact that it's curved at the bottom and the back is higher than the front. I can show you that here, actually. Or maybe not. Oh yes, you can. So it's curved at the bottom, and the see, sorry, the front is shorter than the back, which is really, really nice. And I think that's it. What else? Let me just check my notes for the... Oh, sorry. Also, the other thing was, because this fabric is quite thick, I knew that I had to line the sleeves, because, I mean, if you don't line the sleeves with something slippery, it's very difficult to get it on and off, especially if you're wearing a jumper or something. So I ended up lining it with some navy anti-static lining. Let me just... So navy anti-static lining, which is all bias bound as well. And when I cut out the pieces, I cut out... It doesn't come with a line. No, so there is no lining pieces for this, because the quilted fabric that you make is supposed to sort of be double-sided, as it were. But because I wanted, as I say, the ease of putting my arm in, I decided to line it. And I just basically used the same sleeve pattern to cut out my lining piece. But because the fabric is so thick, I mean, I can show you, it's quite a thick fabric. When I was putting the lining on, I had to really, really stretch it to fit, because obviously the thickness of the pattern made the lining quite small. So in hindsight, I mean, I almost did cut out another pair of lining sleeve linings, but I managed to squeeze it. I managed to pull it through, to stretch the pieces out, but it was very, very tight squeeze, or very, very tight stretch. So in future, if anybody is deciding to line theirs on a thick fabric, make sure you have, I would say, at least ½ an inch of extra seam allowance around the lining pieces. And then what is this called? The tamarack. Bear with me, let me just see if I've got any more notes. Oh yeah, so when I was making the fabric, when I was making the pattern, I was deciding, should I go up a size, because normally if you want to wear, obviously, a dress, it's a close fitted, but if it's a coat, you need to make allowance for sort of chunky jumpers and things that you want to wear underneath. And when I did a toile, it was actually a perfect fit. So go for your right size. I went for a size... Oh. Did I say what sizes it went up to? I didn't, sorry. So it goes from a size 0, which is a bust of 32, waist of 25, all the way up to a size 18, which is a bust of 44, waist of 37. I went for a size 12, which is my exact size, as in it's my exact measurements, and there's plenty of room to put chunky jumpers, and even more so, even with a chunky jumper on, there's still lots of room to sort of wrap yourself in the coat, which is really, really lovely. I added 1 inch to the sleeves as well, apparently, and I added 9 to 12 inches. I don't know why I put 9 to 12. So 9 to 12 inches on the length, because I wanted it to be below sort of mid thigh, and the jacket, the original pattern is just a jacket, which is waist length. And that's it. So that's everything that I made in the month of October. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do check out the rest of my channel and see if there are any other vlogs that you might be interested in watching. I do as I say, I'm a brand ambassador to Little Miss So and So and to Jenny Stitches, so I do vlogs for them. I also subscribe to the Luxury So Hayley Jane box, so I do an unboxing for them. I also subscribe to Beyond the Pink Door Think Pink subscription box, so there are unboxings on there as well. And the unboxings also do feature some of my children, which people say is very cute. So if you'd like to watch those. I also have a quilting and patchwork subscription, which I do with my 11-year-old, and that's on there as well. There are also interviews with fellow vloggers, fabric store owners on my channel, Friday Sews vlogs, which are sort of bi-weekly, bi-monthly updates on what I've been up to, and there's also sewing plan vlogs and end of the month vlogs as well. So if that's something that interests you, please do continue watching. Please do like and subscribe if you haven't already, and in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Take care. God bless. Bye bye.